The lake had always been my sanctuary, a quiet escape from the chaos of daily life. I remember the first time I laid eyes on the property, it was love at first sight. Towering trees lined the shore, their reflection shimmering in the water, and the gentle lapping of waves against the sand had a calming rhythm. Over the years, I poured my heart into making it more than just a property. I wanted it to be a place where memories were made. Building the traditional wooden dock was one of my proudest achievements. Every plank, every nail, and every carefully carved railing reflected the time, effort, and love I invested. It wasn't just a structure, it was a part of our family's history. Summer mornings were spent with coffee in hand, listening to birds sing and watching the sunrise paint golden streaks across the lake. Afternoons were for swimming, fishing, and teaching my kids how to skip stones perfectly across the water. In the evenings, neighbors would stop by, and would share stories, laughter echoing across the lake. For years, life went on peacefully. The HOA never had any complaints, and I believed my dock had been built according to all local and environmental regulations. I prided myself on respecting both nature and neighborhood rules. I even went out of my way to ensure the dock complemented the natural beauty of the area, using untreated wood and maintaining the shoreline carefully. It wasn't flashy, but it had charm, tradition, and character, something I thought everyone could appreciate. Then came the letter. At first, I dismissed it as a routine reminder or perhaps an overly cautious note from the HOA office. But as I read the words, a chill ran down my spine. They claimed my dock violated aesthetic standards and hinted at potential penalties. The language was formal, cold, and unsettlingly vague. No specific violations were listed, no opportunity to discuss or adjust anything, just an implicit threat that action could be taken. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe it was just bureaucratic red tape, nothing more. But deep down, I sensed something more serious lurking beneath the surface. That nagging feeling settled in my stomach like a stone, a quiet warning that my peaceful sanctuary might soon face an unexpected storm. I woke up that morning to an unusual rumble, a deep, mechanical growl that seemed out of place against the usual serenity of the lake. At first, I thought it was some early morning construction down the road, but the noise grew louder, closer, and unmistakably ominous. Pulling back the curtains, my heart sank. There, at the edge of my property, was a massive bulldozer, its yellow frame gleaming under the rising sun, accompanied by a small crew of men in reflective vests. They were already advancing toward my dock, engines roaring and hydraulic arms poised like predators. I rushed outside, waving my arms and shouting, hoping to stop them. "Hey! What are you doing?" My voice seemed to vanish in the roar of machinery. One of the men looked at me briefly and gestured vaguely with his hand, as if I were some inconvenient fly. They had come prepared, carrying chains, crowbars, and other tools for demolition. It didn't take long for me to realize this wasn't a misunderstanding, they were there to destroy my dock, no questions asked. Panic and disbelief washed over me. My dock, my family's memories, the countless summers spent laughing, swimming, and fishing, was about to be reduced to splinters. I tried reasoning with them, explaining that it had been built according to regulations and that I had never received any official notice of violations. But they didn't listen. One of them muttered something about HOA authority and how their orders couldn't be questioned. I felt powerless, watching as the hydraulic arm came down, tearing a plank away. The sound of splintering would echoed like a gunshot in the quiet morning. I ran along the shore, snapping photos and filming videos, trying to document every second. It was all I could do, my protest seemed meaningless against the sheer force of the machinery. The neighbors started to gather, some horrified, some calling the HOA office, but no immediate help arrived. I could see the satisfaction in the crew's movements, their efficiency chilling in its precision. They were following orders without a hint of hesitation, demolishing years of labor like it was nothing. By the time the sun had fully risen, the dock was barely recognizable, a heap of broken wood and twisted nails jutting into the water. I stood there, hands trembling, heart heavy, and mind racing. I knew I had to do something, anything, but I felt trapped between anger, disbelief, and the harsh reality that the HOA had overstepped its bounds. Little did I know, the worst part of this ordeal was yet to come, and a surprising twist would soon turn the situation upside down. After the bulldozer had retreated, leaving behind a mangled heap where my dock once stood, I felt a mixture of rage, despair, and disbelief. The sense of violation was overwhelming. This wasn't just property damage, it was an assault on the years of effort and memories invested in that dock. I spent the next few hours documenting everything, taking photos of splintered wood, broken railings, and the deep gouges in the shoreline. I even recorded videos, narrating what had happened, hoping that some form of accountability could emerge from this chaos. As I worked, a neighbor who had witnessed the destruction approached me quietly. "You know," he said, hesitating, "federal inspectors sometimes check properties along this lake to ensure compliance with environmental laws. You might want to call them." At first, I thought he was joking. How could a federal office possibly care about one demolished dock? But desperation makes people take bold steps, and I realized I had nothing to lose. My calls to the local federal office were met with polite skepticism, but after explaining the situation and providing photos, the agent agreed to send someone out for an inspection. The next day, a government-issued truck rolled into my driveway, bearing the unmistakable insignia of the federal agency. The inspector, a calm yet authoritative figure, introduced herself and began meticulously examining the property. She measured the shoreline, checked water levels, and inspected the remaining debris, asking pointed questions about permits, construction methods, and environmental compliance. I handed her my documentation, including the HOA letter and my own records proving the dock had been built according to regulations. Her eyes narrowed as she reviewed the evidence, and I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time since the demolition. Meanwhile, the news of her arrival seemed to spread quickly. I noticed the HOA board members pacing nervously across the street, their earlier confidence replaced with visible anxiety. When one of them approached, trying to assert authority, the inspector politely but firmly reminded them that she had full jurisdiction to evaluate the site and that any further interference could result in serious legal consequences. I could almost see the color drain from their faces as they realized they had overstepped, and that their actions were being scrutinized by someone far above their local power. For the first time since the ordeal began, I felt a sense of relief. The tide was turning, not because I had the bulldozer stopped immediately, but because the presence of someone with real authority had shifted the balance. The inspector's calm professionalism contrasted sharply with the HOA's panicked energy, and I realized that this unexpected intervention might not only save the remaining structure but also hold the HOA accountable for their reckless actions. As the federal inspector continued her thorough examination, the atmosphere around my property transformed from tense unease to outright panic on the part of the HOA. What had started as smug confidence in their authority had completely evaporated. I watched from my porch as board members whispered frantically to one another, casting nervous glances toward the inspector. It was almost surreal to see their previously commanding postures replaced with hesitancy and fear. Every so often, one of them would approach, attempting to speak on my dock's violation, but the inspector's calm, unwavering authority immediately shut them down. She reminded them that their actions could have serious legal consequences, including fines and potential liability for unauthorized destruction. The inspector meticulously went over every piece of evidence I had gathered, the original HOA letters, my construction permits, and the photographs and videos I had taken during the demolition. She even compared my dock to federal and local regulations regarding shoreline modifications and waterfront structures. Each time the HOA tried to argue, she countered with clear legal references, pointing out that my dock complied with all applicable rules. Their protests became more desperate, but they had no valid grounds. It was a remarkable sight, a group that had felt untouchable suddenly reduced to fumbling and mumbling as their overreach was systematically dismantled. After hours of inspection and discussion, the inspector finally concluded that my dock had been constructed legally and posed no environmental or safety risks. She instructed the HOA to cease any further actions immediately and to provide written acknowledgement that my dock was compliant. The board members had no choice but to obey, their panic now fully justified by the authority standing before them. I could see the relief and satisfaction in the inspector's eyes, but more importantly, I felt a surge of vindication. My years of effort, my family memories, and the principle of doing things the right way had triumphed over bureaucratic overreach. The HOA scrambled to compose themselves, issuing a hesitant apology and agreeing to cover minor damages caused during the demolition. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. Beyond saving my dock, this experience had set a precedent,